We've learned about aggregate demand and how aggregate demand has the four properties of GDP in it, how it's downward sloping like a regular demand curve, that aggregate demand has the C, I, G, and X functions of GDP. Well, now we're going to learn about aggregate supply. You've already watched the ACD economics guy about that. You can watch mine if you want to, too. I've got a YouTube one about aggregate supply. It's a little bit more geared towards college, but if you want to just have a review and you miss watching me teach in my room, then you're welcome to go on JCS Balloon and look up aggregate supply. But I want to give you a little bit of notes on aggregate supply to go along with what you saw on the video. Then I'm going to go over your homework a little bit so you'll sort of know what's going on with that. Okay. So aggregate supply is the supply of all goods and services that go into our GDP. If aggregate demand was if aggregate demand was the demand for all goods and services in America, then aggregate supply is the supply of all goods and services that go into our GDP. Okay, so what makes up aggregate supply? Well, not only is it the supply of all of our goods and services, but this is kind of what changes it. So when we see changes, these are some of the reasons why we see changes, right? National input cost change. The biggest ones in America would be oil and wages. We're seeing that right now as the oil prices go down. That means we can consume more. However, we have a really big part of our economy that now is the oil and gas industry, and that will affect negatively. And then wages. Again, as wages go down as an input cost, that means that companies can supply more. So that'd be a shift to the right in aggregate supply curve. Technology changes, population of workers, human capital, government policies. These are all reasons why aggregate supply would change. But essentially, it's just all the crap that goes into our economy. And the way that it's graphed, and again, you do this on that same curve where you have real GDP, and then you have price level over here. All right. Well, aggregate demand was downward sloping, right? So there's aggregate demand. All right. And then why don't I use blue for this? And this one will be aggregate supply. And so aggregate supply will look like that. So if for some, and then we would call this would be our we use Y as our output number, like our quantity for GDP, and then we'll put here as our equilibrium price level. Okay. So if for some reason we had, this was all the stuff in the GDP, and then we had a technology change and it helped our economy, then all of a sudden, and I will use green, then aggregate supply would move this way, right? And what that would mean, and you can see that, is we would actually have more output at a lower price. All right, so that'd be great. But if for some reason, and this is a great reason, it wasn't a great reason, but it's a prescient reason that our aggregate supply will be changing because the government has literally shut everything down. All right, well, the government shuts everything down, then you're going to see aggregate supply move to the left, right? And that's what we're seeing right now because the government's shutting everything down, which will raise the price of stuff and it will have less GDP. Now, right now, prices probably won't go up. And the reason is because we're also having a reduction of demand for stuff because people won't have as much money, which will push AD down. But you can see here that when there's if one of these things changes for an increase, we move in this direction. And if there's a decrease, we move in this direction. And that's the essentials of aggregate supply. So between the video that you watch from ACDC Economics, if you want to watch my video, and these notes here, that's a pretty good basis for how aggregate supply will work. Okay. And then I will show you, we'll practice some homework questions on the next video.